Alright, we're going to do a quick review of leaf characteristics. You may want to have with you the leaf characteristics page for reference. Remember, we're not doing leaf shapes per se. We're mainly going to be covering the complexity, the arrangement, and the margins. Alright, I figured I'd start with an easy one. Remember the hints as we go through this. Number one, look at complexity first. In other words, figure out what a leaf is. Then, look multiple places if you can. Also, try to look back from the tips of the shoots. And remember, those buds can bud, which can help you or it can confuse you. Let's look at this one then. This is a Chinese elm tree. I can see the buds there. Those axillary or lateral buds, that indicates, see the bud? That indicates each one of these is a leaf, meaning it's simple. Knowing it's simple, what's the arrangement? One comes off at each node, each location, so it's alternate. And the margins, I imagine you can tell, are serrated. Growing near the base of that Chinese elm, I see a pretty little plant. This guy has purple flowers when he's in bloom. Most of you probably are aware of this one because of the seeds it has that stick all over your socks and clothes. This is beggarweed. Well, let's look at beggarweed and see if we can figure out some leaf characteristics. If I look closely, I can see a bud right there. That tells me that is one leaf, so it's trifoliate. Knowing that is one leaf, looking back at the overall plant, I notice that one leaf comes off at each node, so it's alternate, and the margins are smooth. Trifoliate, alternate, smooth. We've got a couple plants right here that we can use for leaf characteristics. We've got this one, which is bayberry or wax myrtle, and then there's a vine that's growing up the bayberry. Let's look at the wax myrtle or bayberry first. Looking closely, I do see some buds. You can see the buds growing there. Remember, we like big buds. That indicates that each one of those is a leaf. So let me pull a leaf off just to confirm. The winds are getting me now. Each one is a leaf, which means it is simple. Looking back then for the arrangement, you can see the leaves are coming off all different directions, but there's still only one leaf per node. One leaf per node, so it is alternate. And the margins on bayberry, some of them you look at are going to be smooth, some of them may be slightly serrated. So you can go either one with those. How about the vine that's growing on the bayberry? The vine is Virginia creeper, a very common vine we have in the area. If we look at this Virginia creeper vine, let's see if we can figure out its leaf characteristics. Buds sometimes are hard to see, sometimes they're easy. One of the things that can help you or it can confuse you is when the buds bud. In other words, when the buds start to grow. And in fact, that's what I see right here. Here's a bud that started to grow. That means it used to be just a regular bud before it started to grow. That tells me that is one leaf. That's one leaf, so it's palmately compound. Palmately compound. Knowing now that's a leaf, how many leaves come off at each spot? Looking back then at the vine, there's one leaf at each node, so it's alternate. And the margins you can see are serrated. Palmate, alternate, serrated. Alright, I'm standing in front of a Yaupon holly now. This one specific variety is a weeping yaupon because the branches come down. Yaupon holly. What are the leaf characteristics? Well, we got to figure out what a leaf is first. Complexity. Let's see if I can zoom in. I do see some little tiny buds. You can see it on the stem, right there's a bud. So that tells me each one of these guys is in fact a leaf. So it's simple. How many leaves come off at each location? One. One leaf per spot, so it's alternate. The margins, you got to look close, but they are serrated. Simple, alternate, serrated. Alright, let's take a look at this beautiful small tree or bush. This is a chaste or chaste tree. Clusters of pretty purplish flowers. But we're interested in the leaves, so let's see if we can figure out leaf characteristics. Alright, let's take a look up close then and see if we can see anything. Looking for buds, looking for buds. Ah, look at that. Can you see them? The buds. Right here. There's some buds. Alright, so now we know what a leaf is. Everything off the stem, past the bud is a leaf. So let's check it out. What is a leaf? That is one leaf. So that means it's palmately compound. Palmately compound. All the leaflets coming off a central point. Alright, now that we got the complexity, what about the arrangement? How many leaves come off at each spot? Let's see. I'm looking 2. Let's look down then. 2. Got to look multiple places. Let's look up. 2. Alright, the arrangement then? Opposite. Palmately compound, opposite, and the margins? Oh yeah, definitely smooth. This is a buttonwood tree. Buttonwood. We also have a very similar in appearance species called a button bush. One of the ways to tell these guys apart, since they are so similar, are the leaf characteristics. So let's check out the buttonwood and see what we can see here. Alright, we got to figure out what leaves are. So let's take a look. Do we see any buds? Well, I'm having a hard time seeing buds themselves, quite honestly. But I remember that buds can bud. So I do see a couple spots where the buds have started to grow. So they've started to grow. That tells me, here's another one right down here. That tells me that that used to be a bud. Meaning, what's a leaf? That is one leaf then. So it's simple. Alright, simple. What's the arrangement? I see one leaf coming off at each spot. So it's alternate. Simple, alternate, and the margins are smooth. This is the one characteristic you can definitely use to tell apart buttonwood from buttonbush, because the leaves are similar in appearance and they get the same kind of flowers. You see here, they're just starting out. They get little puffballs, white puffballs of flowers. But buttonbush has opposite leaves. Buttonwood, as we just saw, has alternate leaves. And the smooth margins are very evident. Simple, alternate, smooth. Here we have a beautiful big live oak tree, distinguishable by its bark, but also the leaves. Let's see if we can figure out the leaf characteristics of a live oak. Some places I look on here, it's really tough to see buds, so I'm going to have to look around a bit. If I'm looking here, I can finally see some buds. There's a bud right there at the junction, a nice big bud, which means each one of these is a leaf. So it is simple. Knowing this is a leaf, what's the arrangement? One is coming off at each spot, so it's alternate, and the margins are smooth. Some of them are bug eaten, but we don't count that. Simple, alternate, smooth. Remember, we don't want to look at the tips because sometimes the tips are going to fool you. Looks like a bunch of them coming off there. We want to look back on the stem if at all possible. Then it becomes obvious what the arrangement is, alternate. Here we have a beautiful anise bush. I like these anise plants because they smell really good. You crush up the leaves, they smell like licorice. Anyway, what about the leaf characteristics here? Well, I'm looking for some buds. Let's see if we can see any. Sure enough, right there in the juncture, you can see a bud. And that bud tells me then, right there, that each one of these is in fact a leaf. So it is simple. Knowing it's simple, how many leaves are coming off at each node, each location? It looks like one, so it's alternate and the margins are smooth. Simple, alternate, smooth. Right behind that anise is an exotic tree. This guy's little, he's just starting out. This is a Chinaberry tree. Let's see if we can figure out Chinaberry's leaf characteristics. Gotta find a bud. Let's see, any buds? Ah, sure enough. Let's see if we can zoom down in there. Right there. You can see there's a bud off the stem. That tells me, because of that lateral or axillary bud, everything from that point off the stem is a leaf. So let's see what a leaf is then. Whoa! This one's pretty big. I'm gonna rip it off. This isn't a real good plant anyway because it is an invasive exotic. Let's see if I can even get it all in. This is one leaf, keep in mind. So how many times did I have to go to hit leaflets? Off the stem I had to turn once, then twice to hit leaflets. That means this is a bipinnately compound leaf. The whole thing is one leaf. Knowing that each one is a leaf, this whole thing is a leaf, how many leaves come off at each location? Well, let's take a look. How many leaves are coming off? Remember, I ripped one off there. I see one leaf per node, meaning the arrangement's alternate. This is why we look at complexity first, because if I look at the leaf, there's a whole lot of opposite going on. And so I may be inclined to say opposite, but we don't care what the arrangement of the leaflets is. We want to know what the arrangement of the leaves is. So we look down, and sure enough, there's only one leaf coming off at each node. Alternate. And the margins obviously are going to be smooth. I noticed a vine growing on the anise here. This is wild balsam apple. It's a bad vine. It stinks when you crush it up. And it's an invasive exotic. It takes over areas. It does have pretty flowers. You can see the flower. And it gets these orange pods. There's an open one down there that are filled with red seeds. Unfortunately, they're poisonous. I specifically wanted to include this because just looking at the margins of the leaf, what do you think? It's deeply serrated. You might be inclined for wild balsam apple to say that it's palmately compound complexity, but you notice it's just deep invaginations that come down, deep serrations that come down. These aren't individual leaflets. The whole thing is one leaf, meaning the complexity is going to be simple. The arrangement, only one comes off at each spot, so it's alternate, and the margins are going to be deeply serrated. This legume is called a rattlebox. Rattlebox, because those pods you see when they dry out, you can shake them and it makes a noise like a rattle. We're going for leaf characteristics, so let's see if we can figure it out. We got to find some buds, right? Alright, sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're not. Let's see if we can see a bud. I think I do. Looking here at the base of this leaf, I believe I see a bud, a little bud right there on the stem. Let me back it back out and see if we can get a better look at it. Alright, so if that is a bud, what is a leaf? Well, if this is a bud, where I'm pointing, that means this is a leaf. Ah, so what is the complexity? Trifoliate. These are trifoliate leaves. Each leaf has 3 leaflets. Knowing that is a leaf, the arrangement then is pretty easy, because you can see just 1 leaf comes off at each node. So it's alternate and the margins are smooth. Trifoliate, alternate, smooth. Oh, a little tiny katydid. See him going there? Little bitty guy. Alright, moving on. Now I'm standing in front of some little red maples coming up. Red maples. Let's get a little closer and see if we can figure out what the leaf characteristics would be. Red maples. Well, I'm telling you right off the bat, you can tell the margins, but we'll get that last. We got to figure out what a leaf is for step 1. So let's see if we can see any buds on here. Oh, they might be tough. Ah, I think I see some. If you're looking right here at this guy I have my fingers on, I can see a bud right in here. Let me see if I can zoom out so you can see it too. Or maybe zoom in. It doesn't want to zoom quite properly. But I do see a little bud in there. That tells me this is a leaf. That is 1 leaf. So it's simple. Knowing it's simple, now it gets a little tricky, because they're all looking like they're coming off toward the ends. But if I go back on the stem a bit, I can tell that in fact they come off opposite each other. It's opposite. There are 2 leaves coming off at each location, and in fact I can see a bud right there. I don't know if you can pick it out, but there's a tiny bud again, so I know that's a leaf. That's a leaf coming off on the other side. Let me look another spot, because if you don't like what you see one place, look another. Here's a great example of what we're talking about. You can see the buds, and then each one is a leaf. They're coming off opposite each other. Definitely opposite. 2 leaves per node. Opposite. And the margins, we said, deeply serrated. It has the big points, but it also has some little points going on there too. Simple, opposite, deeply serrated. Here we have one of our common vines in the area. This is our native grapevine called fox grape or muscadine. Muscadine. Let's see if we can figure out the leaf characteristics of fox grape. Looking for a bud. Some of these buds are pretty easy to see. You can see a bud right here at the juncture. There's a bud. So that tells me this is a leaf. It is simple. Coming off the other side of that leaf is a tendril. Tendrils are modified leaf tissue, but we don't want to count them as leaves. So we're not going to count the tendril when we're doing arrangement. Since we're not counting tendrils, how many leaves come off at each spot? 1, 1. Alright, so it's alternate. And the margins here, I think I'd go deeply serrated. It's hard to know when you draw the line between deeply serrated versus just serrated. This one has bigger teeth and little teeth, so I think I'd go deeply. Simple, alternate, deeply serrated. Fox grape. This is a lead tree. It's a non-native invasive exotic tree. Shouldn't really be here, but since it is, let's see if we can use it for leaf characteristics. Sometimes, remember, the buds are going to be kind of hard to see. Sometimes they're easy. Well, I'm looking. It's kind of tough for me to see any buds. But something that can help me is, remember, the buds can bud. Which means if I can find a spot that something started growing, that keys me in that it used to be a bud. And in fact, looking here toward the tip, where these flowers are coming off, I noticed that sure enough, where that flower attaches there, that had to be a bud at one point in time. Now it's a flowering structure. So that used to be a bud. Everything off the stem then from that point is 1 leaf. Let's see what a leaf is. Let me pull one off. Ah, look at that. This whole thing is 1 leaf. This whole structure is going to be 1 leaf. meaning just like the China berry, it's bipinnately compound. You have to go once, twice before you hit leaflets. Bipinnately compound. Now that I know that this whole thing is one leaf, what's the arrangement? Let's look back on here. The arrangement looks to be alternate. I can only see one leaf coming off at each spot. Remember, we can't count if the bud's budded as being a separate leaf. You may be thinking, wait a minute, it looks like two are coming off up in here. But that, in fact, is one of the buds that budded, made a flowering structure. Leaf-wise, it's just one leaf per node. Perhaps it's a better view on this one. I'm competing with the lawnmower at this point. One leaf per node, so it's alternate. And then the margins, pretty obvious, the margins are smooth. Bipinnate, alternate, smooth. Lead tree. The wind's taking it, but here's another vine. We saw the foxgrape not long ago, and here's another vine. This one's going to be tough to see the buds. I don't know if we're going to be able to zoom in and see them or not. Let me see. If you look along the stem, there is a bud right there. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Which means, since I know that that is a bud right there, this is one leaf. So let me pull off a leaf. Oh, there it goes. What is a leaf then? This is one leaf. It is trifoliate. Trifoliate leaf. Knowing that's a leaf now, how many leaves are coming off at each spot, each node? Well, if I look closely, let me see. Looks like just one leaf at each spot, so it's alternate, trifoliate, alternate, and sometimes the margins look to be a little serrated, sometimes they're smooth. This is poison ivy. This is a native vine. It's actually not a bad plant. I understand why many people don't like it, but it's a good wildlife plant. Trifoliate leaves, alternate, and either serrated or smooth. Poison ivy. Looking at a pretty shoe-marred oak we have here. Beautiful tree. Let's see if we can figure out the leaf characteristics of this shoe-marred. Well, I'm looking, oh yeah, nice big buds. We like big buds. Alright, where's a bud? There's a bud at the base of each of these simple leaves. Hopefully you can make it out. Pretty big there. Each one of these then is a leaf, meaning it's a simple leaf. Looking at how many leaves come off at each spot, there's only one leaf coming off at each node, so it's alternate. Simple, alternate, in the margins, very easy to recognize, deeply serrated margins. Simple, alternate, deeply serrated. Shoe-marred oak. This is a beautiful little red bay tree you can see here. It does warm my heart to see it because so many of our red bays have been killed in the area. It does get distinctive galls on the leaves from insects. That's not our focus, so we're trying to figure out leaf characteristics. What are the leaf characteristics then of the red bay? Well, let's see if we can see any buds. Sure enough, if I'm looking down here along this stem, I can see a bud right there. That tells me that is one leaf, so they are simple leaves. Knowing that that is one leaf, how many leaves come off at each spot? We don't want to look at the tips for sure, and we definitely want to look back on the stems. Let's see if I can find a good, there we go. This is a good spot to look. Just one leaf coming off at each node, so it's alternate, simple, alternate, and smooth. Obviously smooth. Red bay. This is a very attractive firebush or scarlet bush. Real pretty, great pollinator plant. Let's see if we can figure out some leaf characteristics with this guy. Gotta find a bud somewhere, right? So I'm gonna zoom in and see if we can see any buds on here. Yeah, okay. If I'm looking, I can see a bud right there. There's a bud. So that tells me each one of these is in fact a leaf. Maybe you get a better view of the bud now. Oh, the wind's moving another leaf in the way. Each one is a leaf, meaning it's a simple leaf. How many leaves are coming off at each node? Well, once again, I gotta look closely. There are three. Three of them are coming off. Right there at that node, on the one back, there's three coming off. Okay, that looks fairly consistent. 3 or 4 coming off at each spot. The arrangement then is going to be whorled. Simple, whorled, and the margins are smooth. Simple, whorled, smooth. Firebush, scarlet bush. This is a common plant, planted as a landscape plant because it gives you texture. It's got textured leaves. It's planted mainly for that, but it also does have flowers and fruit that get on it. This is wild coffee. Let's see if we can figure out wild coffee, the leaf characteristics. Got to look for some buds. Alright, let's zoom in a little and see if we can see a bud anywhere. Well, it looks to be right here. That looks to be a bud right at the base. So that means this is one leaf. It is a simple leaf. How many leaves come off at each location? Looks like 2. So simple, opposite, and the margins are smooth. This is one you could also throw in wavy, because you can see from the side it undulates up and down. We're not going to use wavy though, but if you see wavy described, that would be a great example of wavy. Simple, opposite, smooth. Wild coffee. Here's another type of oak tree. This is one of the white oaks we have in the area. Actually 2 of them next to each other. Let's see what we can find leaf characteristic wise with this guy. Let's find a place where hopefully it'll be easy to see some buds. Ah, yeah. If I'm looking in here, I can see some buds. There's a bud. There's a bud. That tells me each one is a leaf, so it's simple. And looking at the same location, I can tell only one leaf comes off at each spot. So it's alternate, simple, alternate. Now this one may be tough to tell on these little leaves. Let me pick this one. That is a great example of lobed. You notice how it doesn't come to points? It's rounded on there. That's a lobed type of margin. Simple, alternate, lobed. Here's another view of that leaf. Perhaps you can see the lobes a little better on here. Doesn't come to points. They're all rounded. Simple. Whoa, look at those buds. Huge buds. Wow. Love those big buds. Big bud. Simple, alternate, lobe. This is a little elderberry bush that's growing here. Elderberry. Before we look at the elderberry leaf characteristics, it's probably a good time to remember those hints. We want to look at complexity first. We want to look multiple places if we can. And we want to look back from the tip. Keeping in mind that those buds can bud. Let's see what we can figure out then with this elderberry. Elderberry. Any evidence of buds? I do see some buds. Sure enough. If we zoom in and try to look more closely at the stem, we should be able to see some buds in there. Let's see. There. There's a bud. There's a bud. Each one of these guys coming off then is a leaf. Let me pull a leaf off so we can look more closely at one leaf. Alright, this then, now that I pulled it off, is one leaf. You can see you had to come once, twice to get the leaflets. This one is bipinnate. Sometimes you'll find tripinnately compound leaves on elderberry. This one, the leaves I'm looking at are bipinnate. Bipinnate. Look back at the stem then. How many leaves come off at each spot? Now that we know the complexity, looks like 2. 2 leaves come off at each node. Bipinnate, opposite, and the margins, you have to look close, but they're there. The margins are serrated. Bipinnate, opposite, serrated. Elderberry. This is a sweet gum tree. It has star-shaped leaves, and it's the one that gets the pokeballs fruit-wise. Let's see if we can find out anything past the star shape as far as leaf characteristics for sweet gum. Let's see. Looking for buds. Ah, look at that. There's a huge bud. Alright. Now that I know that's a bud, that means each one of these guys is going to be a leaf. So let's see what a leaf is. That's one leaf. It's simple. Simple leaves. How many leaves come off at each spot? Well, some places it's a hot mess looking there. Let's see if I can get one that is relatively clear cut. There we go. How many leaves come off? 1, 1, 1. It's alternate. Simple, alternate, and the margins? Deeply serrated. Big points, and if we can look closely at one of the leaves, look at that. There are little serrations on there too. Deeply serrated leaves. Simple, alternate, deeply serrated. Sweet gum. This is a hickory tree, a pignut hickory. Pignut hickory produces big hickory nuts. Let's see about the leaf characteristics. If we can figure anything. Oh man, look at that. Big buds. Yeah, makes it so much easier when we can find those big buds. Look at that. You can see the buds there coming out, the axillary or lateral buds. So that means this is a leaf. Well, let's see what a leaf is. Pull it off. Let's take a look. That is one leaf. So that's pinnate. We have to come off one time before we hit leaflets. Pinnate. That whole thing is one leaf. Pinnately compound. Knowing that that's a leaf, what about the arrangement? Definitely I want to look multiple places if I can. Now that I know that's a leaf, it looks like just one leaf comes off at each node. It's alternate. Pinnate, alternate, and the margins? You got to look close again. Margins, serrated. Serrated margins. That beautiful hickory. Pinnate, alternate, serrated margins. Here's another view. You can see the big bud. Pinnate, alternate, serrated. Alright, now this one's on you. This is that firebush or scarlet bush again. Let's see if you can figure it out. I'm going to give you some views as if you were looking at it, and let's see if you can figure out the leaf characteristics. Let's look close. Ah, okay. That should give you a feel for where the leaf starts. Knowing that that's a leaf, and how many are coming off, and then you can see the margins. What do you think? Did you get it? There's the bud. You got 3 buds actually there. Knowing that's a bud, that is one leaf, so it's simple. 3 leaves coming off, it's whorled, and the margins obviously smooth. Hope you got it. Almost walked right past this little guy coming up. This is a winged or shining sumac, a small tree or bush. It gets its name because it gets little wings between the leaflets. Let's see if we can do the leaf characteristics here. I'm going to zoom in on the stem, see if we can see some buds. Sure enough, I do see some buds. Let me see if I can point one out. Here is a bud, which means, what's a leaf? That is one leaf. The whole thing's one leaf. It's pinnate, pinnately compound. Knowing that each one of those is a pinnately compound leaf, how many leaves come off at each spot? Sure looks like one. So it's alternate. Pinnate, alternate, and the margins, definitely smooth. Pinnate, alternate, smooth. Winged or shining sumac. The name comes, remember, it's got these little wings. You can see these wing-like structures between the leaflets on the stem of the leaf there. That's where it gets its name. Pinnate, alternate, smooth. Yeah, this is a bad plant. This is Brazilian pepper. Probably our worst invasive exotic plant, terrestrial-wise, we have in the state. Let's see if we can learn to identify this highly invasive exotic. You know, I'm having a tough time seeing any buds. I am. Of course, I don't have my glasses on. That may be one of the things. One of the things that can help us, though, is if we remember the buds can bud. And I'm looking here at the base of this leaf. I see a bud that started to bud. So that tells me where the leaf starts. There's a leaf. It's a pinnately compound leaf. Pinnate, now that I know each one of those is a pinnately compound leaf, how many leaves are coming off at each spot? Looks like one. One leaf each spot. So it's alternate. And the margins? What do you think about the margins of Brazilian pepper? Smooth, although sometimes they are serrated. They can be smooth or serrated. Pinnate, alternate, and smooth. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up with this one. This will be our last one. I hope this video has helped. The more you can practice, the better off you're going to be. This is a big, as far as ones I've seen, coral bean tree, coral bean. It gets clusters of pretty red flowers. I don't see any flowers, but that's okay. We're not worried about the flowers now anyway. Let's see if we can figure out leaf characteristics on a coral bean. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Let's see if we can find any buds on here. Well, sure enough, I think I see a bud. If I'm looking at the base of the, right here, there's a bud, which means, what is a leaf? Each one of these guys, you can see the bud. Let me pull a leaf off. Each one of these is going to be a leaf. So, what's a complexity? That whole thing is one leaf. It's got 3 leaflets. Trifoliate. Remember, look multiple places, because I just noticed another leaf down here. One of the leaflets fell off. You got to look multiple places. There's another one. Look multiple places, you realize, sure enough, they pretty much have 3 leaflets on them. Trifoliate. Now that I know that's a leaf, what is the arrangement? How many leaves are coming off at each location? Well, I see 1. So it's alternate. And the margins? What do you think about the margins on here? Smooth. Definitely, I'm going smooth. Trifoliate? Alternate? Smooth. Alright, study hard. Review as much as you can. The more you can look at, the better off you're going to be. And remember, what are the hints? Complexity first. Look multiple places, back from the tip, and those buds, they can bud.